Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us today for another edition of Coffee with Keisha and Leesa. Today we are going to break open the account of Ruth and Naomi, and we're just going to take it slow and go over a couple of chapters and glean from it, try to get wisdom, how we can apply this to our life today. And we're just going to break it down. If you have any questions, let us know. Any comments, if you want to join us. Hey, baby girl.
Morning.
If you just want to communicate with us, talk to us, give us your feedback, we would greatly appreciate it as we're going along. I will have Keisha's phone when she unlocks it.
Oh, it's not unlocked.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I'll be able to read your comments. So do me a favor and hit the arrow. And let's spread this message. So we're going to go ahead and break into the book of Ruth.
Okay, good morning, guys. So get out your Bibles, notebooks, pens, because like she said, we're going to dig into Ruth today. So I'm going to start in Ruth 1, and I'm just going to read through this and kind of just give some insight. So in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech.
Yeah.
His wife's name Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and had lived there. So Moab, the historical name means mountain. It was like a mountainous land in the Jordan, the land alongside much of the eastern shore of the Dead Sea. And Moabites were actually pagan worshipers. So they worshiped the deity Chemosh. That was their national deity. And that actually, Chemosh actually meant destroyer, subduer, or the fish god. And you can study more about that in Judges 11:24 and 2 Kings 3:27. The thing about the Moabites deity that they worshipped, it required human sacrifice. So they were gruesome, very violent. You know, that's the type of land that they were living in this time.
Yeah.
So now Naomi's husband died, and she was left with her 2 sons. She was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other named Ruth. So Naomi's husband had passed away during this time, and she was left with her 2 sons, and the 2 sons married Orpah and Ruth, which were Moabites. So Orpah and Ruth had the background of worshiping the pagan god.
Idol worship. Cult worship, because they were worshiping a false god and doing all of those rituals with sacrifices and very, very ugly, anti-Christ. And they were Jewish who were consecrated to God. They were that meant that they were supposed to be separated and only God's, and they were not supposed to mix with non-Jewish religions.
Right.
So they were supposed to keep that people pure because he wanted them, because they were separated for him.
Right.
And so they went ahead and did this.
Yes. So they went ahead and married Ruth and Orpah, even though. So after they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So now after 10 years, Naomi is here, and Ruth and Orpah, and Naomi has lost her husband, lost her 2 sons, and Ruth and Orpah have lost their husbands.
And they all live together.
Yes.
So like they're all living together. So there's no telling what that would look like.
That's exactly right. So verse 6, when she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Verse 8, when Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, "Go back each of you to your mother's home," So, during this time, Naomi is giving them the blessing to move forward. She's giving them the blessing to move back, to stay with their people, to go back to their hometown, to their family. But during all this time, the number one lesson that we can learn out of this is that loss is hard. So during this time, Naomi has lost a lot, Orpah has lost a lot, and Ruth has lost a lot. So right now, these three women, they're all three widows, and they're traveling back to where Naomi, well, they're going to. She gives them the option to stay or go. And we're going to read forward to see what happens, and then we're going to dig deeper into what this actually means. So then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to your dead and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands?" Verse 12, "Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I have thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to two sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me." At this time, they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people, and her gods go back with her." Verse 16, but Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, but it ever be so severely, if anything but death separated you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So, the first thing that Naomi mentions during this time is that she's bitter, right? Because during this time, like I said, loss is hard. Naomi had lost her husband and her two sons, and Ruth and Orpah had also lost their husbands. So during this time, Orpah decides, hey, you know what? I'm going to go back to what's familiar to me. I'm going to go back what's easy. I'm going to go back to that.
Comfortable.
Yes, what I'm comfortable in doing. I'm going to return back to that because it's just too much for me to handle. I can't, basically she was like, I'm not in a place to move forward right now. I want to go back. So that's what she did. But Ruth decides that no matter what, where Naomi goes, she's going to go. She accepts Naomi's God, our God. She accepts him as Lord and Savior and decides, you know what? Wherever you go, I'm going to go. I'm going to take your God in. This is what it says. It says in verse 16, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." So right then and there, she accepted God.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because this is a scripture that's often used on farmhouse signs.
It is.
And it's put above the bed. And I really think it's kind of misused because it has nothing to do with husband and wife. Which, speaking of which, there's my husband. Hey, baby. So it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with this bond that Naomi showed her who God was. Naomi must have showed Orpah. I always want to say Oprah. Naomi showed Orpah, but for whatever reason, she didn't receive it because Jewish people have lots of rituals and they recite the Torah, and they have all of these things that remind them of who God is and all the things that God has done and all these festivals. So they must have done that in this pagan land.
Right.
But it impacted Naomi. And so she was like, you know what? I accept your God.
Right.
And so it had nothing to do with really, oh, you are it for me, and I'm going to follow you wherever you go. It was God.
It was God. It was God in her. She was shining. Yes. She was shining God so much that Ruth was willing to be
She's
brave.
Like, I want that. Yes. And I want to learn more about it, and I want to follow after you.
Yes.
Because you're following after Christ, like Paul. Paul said in the New Testament, follow me as I follow after Christ. That's what that was about.
Yes, it was. And
not about a person, but
Ruth
Christ.
Didn't want to go back to what she had seen before. You know, all the gruesome,
sacrificing
all the human sacrifices and all that.
You know, the people that you loved, your children, they would sacrifice their children.
Yes, in 2 Kings, that's what I was saying for them to study about. In 2 Kings, let's see which one is it. I think 3 maybe. Let me go back to, I have a ton of notes here. 2 Kings 3:27 is where it actually talks about all that.
Yeah.
They gave up their first son. I mean, their firstborn son.
Yeah.
For this idol.
Yeah.
You know. So yes, it was very gruesome, very, very tough times, and they are doing all these rituals in that land.
Right. And they moved there on purpose. That's what always gets me. Jeremy Hargis. He's back on Facebook now. He's watching us. But what's interesting is that, like we talked about, they were Jewish. They left because there was a famine in their land.
Right.
And they thought it would be better. They thought it would be better to go over there, even though God had said, don't do that, don't intermarry. But they did it anyway because they thought it was a good idea for their family. And then she becomes bitter.
Right.
And then she loses her whole family. But, did God really say? Like, did God, did God really tell them to do that? And so now she's bitter, but it was her own circumstances, her decision to go over there, and her husband's, and then they lost everything, and now she's bitter.
She is.
But still, loss is hard.
Yes, that's the whole point of it.
Whether it happens to us or...
Yes, the whole point of this is that during this time, what's going on with them is that, they're all going through a very tough time because they have lost it all. And I think that we can all, apply this to our own lives because each one of us have lost something.
Yeah. Yeah, by whether we did it or it just happened to us.
Yes,
regardless, the feelings are real.
Yes, and a broken heart.
And those girls are young.
Yes, and a broken heart can cause you to be bitter. I don't know about you or not, but I know what a broken heart feels like. And a broken heart can truly cause you to be bitter. It can cause all these feelings and emotions that you wouldn't normally even have because your heart is so broken. Yeah, and
then you really have a different filter, and so you see everything differently, and you make your decisions based off of that.
Well, a lot of times when you have a broken heart during that time, you will base everything off your feelings.
Right.
So it's like you could be seeing total red and total black when that's not really what you need to be seeing because you're walking by your feelings, and your feelings lie to you.
Right.
They will lead you off the wrong path if you walk by them. But it's totally normal to go through that time period also. Also the time of mourning, because it's grief.
Whether it's a job or finances,
a spouse,
bankruptcy,
a child, a friend.
There's grief and mourning in that time period,
or even a dream. Even a dream that you had that I'm talking about, like
a
desire.
Yes,
like a desire. You had a dream, or you had this plan all in your mind. How you thought your life was going to turn out, and it didn't turn out anything like that.
Yeah, or a business that you started and it didn't take, and you lost everything. Whatever it is, we've all been there. We all can
have
that.
Something that we have lost in our lives. All of us. So we can put ourselves in Naomi, Ruth's, and Orpah's circumstances and feel how they must have been feeling. And not just that. So now we see that Ruth and Naomi are going to go on a journey back to Naomi's
an unknown
home.
journey.
Completely unknown.
I mean,
completely unknown to
Ruth knows where she's going, but she doesn't know. She's missed all of this time, so she doesn't really know what it's going to look like.
Right.
But Naomi has never seen it. She doesn't know these people. And she also knows that they don't like Moabites.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Ruth,
so she's going into a culture that she knows she's going to be hated.
Mm-hmm. And that took me yesterday. It took me to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding, and He will make your path straight. So in this moment, Ruth is totally just trusting what Naomi has shown her, the love of Christ, shown her these things. She's totally going on this journey, one step in front of the other, with
great
pure faith and trust in the Lord that He has got her. I mean, she has no idea what she's even going to get into. She has no idea what God has planned for her just by taking this step. They have nothing.
They have no food. The clothes
Two
on their
widows.
backs. 2 widows.
I mean, could you imagine me and you being widows and just going to a whole, a whole unknown place? God tells us, hey, you know, you need to go to Guatemala, or you need to go here, or you need to go there, you know, and we're okay, here we go.
And the thing is, that's why the Bible talks about taking care of the widows all the time, and the children and the poor, because they were not able to have a job. Like, we can go ahead and I can make furniture and sell it.
Yeah.
She can make a craft and sell it, or we can try to get a job. They didn't have that option. They didn't have that option. So they were literally without any resources, any support, any covering. You know, like the husband was the covering for the wife.
Yeah, he's a protector. You know, a man is a protector.
Yeah, and so they were left alone, abandoned.
Yeah.
You know?
And rejected.
I was thinking that too. I was actually thinking that too. Yeah.
Rejected. I mean, it's just...
And the potential rejection, because, you know, for Naomi, she knew. And then Ruth, you know, what were they going to say? Well, you shouldn't have went over there.
Right.
Like, the family didn't last that long. We're fine here, but then you left. Like, she doesn't know what she's going to get either.
Yes. But Ruth decides to confess her loyalty to Naomi and follow and trust in God. And that's amazing to me. I mean, how many times in our lives have we taken the easy road like Orpah?
Yeah.
You know, where we went back. We went back to what we were comfortable in. We went back to what we knew because it made us feel, you know, it has a lot to do with being comfortable, because Orpah knew that. She knew what she was going back to, and it was comfortable. She didn't want to step out in faith and trust in the God that Naomi was speaking about.
And there's no stretching in comfort. That means there's no growth.
That's right.
You know, when you go backwards, there is no growth.
I mean, or has there been a time in your life where you've taken the road that you wanted instead of the road that God wanted? I think that we've all done that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that we've all decided to...
I'll do it my way.
Yes, and stay stuck in the mud sometimes and not want to move forward because it's just easier. But in all actuality, it's not, because you're being... not really tormented, but it's like God is like, hey, you know, I've got something better for you, this, that, and the other. Just take that step and trust me.
I think God will get your attention one way or the other. And the only way that he could get Ruth's attention was to strip her of everything. And get her back on track.
And sometimes it takes a time where we have to refocus. You know, where we have to, where we go through
recalibrate.
Where we have a really tough time that we're going through. And sometimes we think that it's the enemy that's caused that, but actually sometimes it's God that's caused that. Because there's things that are inside of us, our character that needs to be worked through. Just some things that we need to maybe just humble ourselves before God. And maybe instead of worrying so much about the next step, we just need to be seeking Him more.
Right.
You know, like during that time, we just need to be saying, God, I'm thankful for you. I love you. I trust your will and your way for my life. I'm no longer going to try to make something happen that's not supposed to happen. Because sometimes we get in the way of ourselves.
Right. And I'm going to wait on you.
Yes. And we have to, you know, pray sometimes, set me free of me.
Yeah.
I say that, you know, a lot of times. I'm like, God, just set me free of me. What I'm keeping myself from doing or keeping you from doing through me, because I'm stubborn sometimes. You can ask my husband, I'm hard-headed sometimes I'm just kind of like, no, this is how it needs to be. So I think that he just works on us in different ways, and sometimes we just have to take a step back and know that he's got us.
Decrease me and increase you.
Yes, less of me, more of you.
Yes,
and I think it just takes, like I said, a time of just totally seeking his face, because that's what we need to be doing anyway. We don't even need to be worrying about the future or worrying about the next step. We just need to be seeking him first. And that's exactly what these two ladies were going to do. They decided to fully trust in God, and at the end, they were greatly rewarded. And that is what is so beautiful about it.
Yeah, when she told me, when we were talking about this yesterday, we knew last week we were going to do Ruth. It's something we wanted to do for months, really. I love Ruth. One thing, I shared a meme yesterday, and I wasn't even thinking about this. But it says, Philippians is seen as the happiest book of the Bible, yet it was written in prison. Your circumstances does not determine your joy.
That's right.
And, Ruth didn't realize that. She wasn't at that place. She was claiming to be bitter. She was in that mindset. And even though she'd been in this prison, so to speak, she wasn't focusing on God. And she wasn't focusing that she had the joy of the Lord. And she had him. But she wasn't focusing on that. And so that is the key to being able to get out of that circumstance or out of that mindset, is to have the joy of the Lord and to remember that it's happiness is fleeting. Happiness comes and goes. But the joy of the Lord remains, because it comes from him. It's something that he infuses you with. And later on they realize that. And then the other thing that we were talking about, Craig Rochelle is another pastor that I listen to all the time. He's always talking about you're one relationship away from changing your entire life.
Yes, and that is so beautiful. And
I love that, because even though Ruth never should have gone to Moab, she had no business going there, her and her family.
Naomi.
They met Naomi.
Naomi had no
business. Yes. She had no business going there, but she needed to meet Ruth.
Yes.
And so,
because God had a plan.
And we'll talk about that later, about how she was used, both of them.
So, verse 19. So the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women
She's the talk of town.
Can this be Naomi? So they look at her, and she doesn't even look the same.
Her countenance is so different, because of the bitterness and the heaviness of life.
It was a heaviness, yes.
The heaviness of life got to her, and it changed her countenance.
Every single one of us can testify to the heaviness of life.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We are all broken, guys. Every single one of us are broken and in need of a Savior.
Right.
Every single one of us have felt bitterness. We felt heaviness. We felt grief. We felt hurt. We felt pain. We can attest to how Naomi is feeling, because like I said, each one of us has lost something.
Yeah.
Hope. Hope has been lost. A friend has been lost. Trust has been lost. Just every single one of us can relate. Yes. So she says, this is what Naomi says in verse 20. She says, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter." So
she
there,
blames God
she
for
is
her
blaming
circumstance.
God for the storm that's going on in her life. She is blaming God. She gets, that's like some anger too. I'm sensing some anger in that.
Resentment.
She's like, and it says plainly, the Almighty. So she is blaming God for what has happened.
And she wants to change her name.
Yes.
Because of what happened to her. And again, this is something that she caused. She caused this.
She caused this rainstorm.
But God was there the whole time, because God will never leave you or forsake you.
No,
He will go with you wherever you are. He will go after you. And he uses her disobedience. He uses the relationship with Ruth and Naomi.
And I think the funny part about this is that we come to find out that Naomi needed Ruth just as much as Ruth needed Naomi.
That's right.
And that is beautiful. And I like how you touched on the relationships, because There's relationships. There's people that need you.
Right.
Someone out there needs a friend like you. Someone out there needs a friend like you that's just going to sit and listen and just be there with them during tough times. And they're going to be what you need. You're going to be what they need. And then they're going to push you to be closer to God, to, to have those dreams, maybe those dreams or whatever, those ideas that you have, they're going to help cheerlead you on and say, you know what, I believe in you. I'm going to,
and help you fine tune it, help it come to pass.
Yes, and say, you know what, I'm willing to go with you, like Ruth did Naomi, to see this dream through, whatever it is. I just think it's very important who we're around, who we give our time to, who's in our circle. It's very, very important. So 21, I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me. How many times have we blamed God for stuff?
Oh, yeah. Like, the Lord has afflicted me.
Yes.
Have you ever said that in your own words? Have you ever claimed, like, I can't believe God did this. Why is this happening to me? Why me? Why is this happening?
Why is this happening to me? Or how much, maybe you're going through a really tough time and you've been going through it for a really long time and you're like, God, why are you tarrying so long during this? Why am I not seeing you work? And he's clearly speaking, but I am working.
Yeah.
You can't see what I'm doing. You don't know what I'm doing. But in the midst of that, your joy is going to be restored. In the midst of that, this is going to be restored to you.
And there's so many examples of it in the Bible. I mean, look at Job. Look at, there's a whole book, if you've never read Job, that is just terrible circumstances. Everything. And I'm talking like extreme everything. But God restores it all. Through the process, he grows closer to God. And then there's, the woman with the issue of blood. She was sick for years and years and years. And there's, we don't know why. But at the end of the day, we're always better for it, and we're always stronger for it.
Yes,
and and we should be growing closer to God and knowing Him on a deeper level.
Yes, and see, that's the number one. It's seeking Him. So just saying, God, whatever you have for me, I love you. I trust you. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. I'm not going to lean on my own understanding of this. I know that you're going to work it out. And boy, does he work it out.
He really does.
So, yes, he does. So, 22. So, Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Now, Naomi had a relative of her husband's from the clan of Elimelech. I'm telling you guys, I'm never going to get these Bible words right.
Elimelech.
I'm never going to get them right.
They're hard.
So hard.
They're hard. That's God's sense of humor right there.
And I'm telling you, when he created me, he had a sense of humor anyway. So I get it. A man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess, goodness, these words, said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. So not only has Ruth left what she has always known and followed Naomi, been with her every step of the way. She knows that Naomi is bitter right now. She wants to be called Mara, but she's not giving up hope in Naomi. And as soon as she gets there, she's like, you know what? I'm going to go work for us, because she wanted to take care of her.
Right. And how hard is that? Like when you have somebody that's close to you and they're bitter.
Right.
Like it's hard to be around people that are negative and bitter and resentful and angry. But she made a covenant with her. That means that she made this bond relationship that I'm not going to leave you and I'm going to stick to it.
Wherever you go, I go. In 16, wherever you go, I go. Whatever you say, I say.
And it's unbreakable. That bond is unbreakable. But let me read this, because Katie put a comment in here. And she says, that's what happened when I found out I was pregnant with Asher and Sawyer, my two youngest. With Asher, I turned to Jesus and I prayed, cried, screamed. A little voice, the only time I heard it said, everything is okay. I heard it twice in a row. guess what? Everything's okay.
Exactly.
He is loved and he is precious. I also received the man I was praying for years, Evan.
Yes. And that's beautiful, Katie. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's how we can relate. That's how we can take books of the Bible. You know, that's why it's so important about reading your word every day.
Yeah.
You know, Pastor Andrew Harris always says all the time,
15 and 15.
And that's the truth. I mean, that's the minimum standard.
Yeah.
You know, 15 minutes of reading, 15 minutes of prayer and meditation on the word, and letting God speak to you through his word. Yeah. We have to get rooted and grounded in this, so then when times like that happen, we know who to call on. Right. We know who to call on, the name of the Lord, because we have that relationship with him. And we trust his word that it's true and that it's right and that he's for us and not against us. Because in this moment, you know, Naomi, she thinks that God's against her. Mm-hmm. She really does.
Yeah, she's in a deep
depression.
Deep place.
She's feeling sorry for herself. And I've been in a deep, dark depression. I have been there. I have walked through some very, very, very deep places, dark places. I am your girl when it comes to that. Deep, dark places, I have walked through them. I'm still walking through them, okay? But each day, I don't give up. I know that God, I have to have trust, like in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in him always, that he is going to direct the path. And it's so beautiful that God spoke to Katie in that moment and said, you know what, everything's going to be okay. And I really feel that God was speaking to Ruth in that moment and telling her, it's going to be okay. If you go with Naomi, I'm going to reward you.
Katie said, it's hard with 3 toddlers, but I try. I'm just thankful I can carry my phone around on Thursday and listen to you too.
Praise God for that. Yes. I'm so thankful for you, Katie. I'm so thankful for what God's doing in your life. Yeah. I'm telling you, you just keep being that strong person that you are.
That's right.
Because you have a beautiful testimony to be shared with this world.
Yes.
You are a beautiful person inside and out. You are naturally beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, she is naturally. Yeah. And you are raising those little kiddos right.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
So we're going to move forward.
So we're in chapter 2, right?
Yes, we are in chapter 2. And we are in verse 3. So in verse 2, Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." Verse 3, so she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was the clan of, say the word.
Let me look at it.
Elimelech.
I was like, what word?
Her say the hard words because
I like that name. That's one of the few that I actually do like.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know. So again, we're in Ruth 2.
Yes, Ruth chapter 2. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." So right as Boaz greeted them, he even said,
he blesses them.
"The Lord be with you." How much more beautiful is it than a man that's going to be a man of God and he's going to say, he's going to bless
life and bless
speak
you.
life over you. And that's the kind of husband that we need. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're single and you're looking for someone, it's important how they speak. It's important. It's important when, if they're blessing you or speaking life to you. It's just so important. I just think that it's like the hottest thing ever when my husband prays over me or I don't even remember what he did the other night, but he did something and I was like, oh my gosh, that was so hot.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I tell my husband that too.
I was, and he's like, you're so funny, like the funniest things. I'm like, but it's the truth. It's the truth. There's nothing.
A man after God's own heart is hot.
It's hot.
Yes.
It is so hot.
Yes.
It is. So he says, "The Lord bless you." They called back. Verse 5, Boaz called the foreman of his harvesters. Whose young woman is that?
So she stood out from the crowd.
All of a sudden.
Like, who is that?
Out of everybody that is in this field.
Who dat?
Everybody that's in this field. Boaz sees Ruth. Now tell me that wasn't God.
Yeah. And you know what, though? She stood out because she was working.
Right. She was a hard worker.
She was working.
And not just that. How many... I've never lived in a different town, so I can attest to that. But you have lived in different places. How hard is it to get adjusted?
Oh my gosh.
You know what I'm saying? Like adjusted to
the
being
hardest adjustment was when I moved here.
In a new town.
Like seriously.
You know nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
And
it
then
is difficult.
How brave was it for her to even just
get in there, dig in the trenches,
start
literally,
working? Because she's thinking of Naomi. She's not thinking of herself,
right?
And
she's
that's
like, I've got to do
too.
this
That's
for me
Christ-like.
and her. Yeah,
that's Christ-like. Thinking of somebody else and not
Yes.
thinking of yourself. She's thinking of Naomi in this, and she's like, I got to help Naomi get out of this funk that she's in.
And Naomi can't do the work.
Right.
She's older. She can't. She's not capable.
But,
so it's on her to make it happen.
And Ruth is brave enough, like I said, to go glean and work in this field, because that is not easy work.
No.
I mean, I hate picking the weeds in my house.
No, we've had crops, you know, and it's not easy. It isn't. And I imagine there it had to be even harder because they didn't have the tools.
Right.
We have tools.
No, they're doing everything with their hands. They're in the hot heat and they don't have they probably have to go to a well to go get the water. And
they
you don't know
can't
how
just go in
long
the
it's going to
fridge.
take. I mean,
You know?
I mean, we have it so easy.
Yeah.
We really
clean
do.
water. We have clean water.
That's true too. Yeah, I mean, you just
I've been to Guatemala. That water, I wouldn't even touch my toe in that water.
I mean, they probably had to drink the same water they were giving the animals and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they had to.
Yeah.
That they probably had
In
to
the
bathe
well.
it. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, 6, the foreman replied, she is the Moabitess who came from Moab with Naomi. Verse 7, she said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters. She went to the field and has worked steadily from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. So she was a very hard worker, and she was noticed automatically by Boaz. Yeah. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and following along after the girls. I have told the men not to touch you, and wherever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars from the men that the men have filled. Verse 10, and this she bowed down with her face to the ground. She exclaimed, why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner? This gives me chills.
I know, I've got it too.
I mean, it kind of makes me want to cry a little bit.
Yeah, it really does, because it really is awesome. But you know what? I want to explain a little bit about how the Jewish culture is. They allotted their fields and their harvesting for the poor.
Yes.
So they were always thinking about the poor. They thought about themselves. They thought about what they were going to sell and or I guess use. But then also that gleaning process was that they could come alongside of those that were harvesting and get the stuff that falls off the floor. And so that was their culture. And so she was allowed, that's why she was allowed to come in there. And he's like, listen, don't go to anybody else's field.
Right.
You're going to be protected here, because I'm sure it was dangerous. I'm sure she's attractive.
Yes.
So she's like, I told the men not to touch you, not to hurt you.
And
so
I think
that's a potential that could have happened.
I think the most beautiful part about it is, Leesa, is that it never says her physical appearance.
No, it doesn't. But you just
this
assume this.
Yes, because her heart was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what is so important to us, not to look at people by their
and
outward
she was a hard
appearance,
worker,
to look
faithful
at their heart and notice that they are beautiful because of that. So I mean, she was a shining example.
Exactly.
And that's just beautiful to me. And this amazing man of God notices her
and gives her favor. And what's favor? Favor, like we always ask God, I need favor. But favor is given through people. And he was higher than she was in status and in finances, and so he was able to shine a light into her circumstance. And that's Boaz is a Christ-like figure.
Yes.
And so he gave her favor, and he gave her mercy and grace by letting her pick and then eventually pick more.
I mean, God had him notice her.
Yeah. I mean, and so he was supplying her resources, her needs, her food.
I mean, this all goes back to Esther, what we were talking about as such a time as this. She was called to be in that field for such a time as this.
Yeah. And the whole time. I mean, it goes back to when they were in Moab. Everything
how
was
Naomi
God
and
turned it around and used
into that. Yes, how he had a plan the whole time. He had never left them.
it's that one relationship. That one relationship that is
that
meant
matters.
to change your whole
Catapults
life.
you. You
That's
know, it
right.
catapults you to the future, to what God
has
for you. And that is that is
and she
so
never
awesome.
would have this if she didn't do it.
And verse 10, she bowed down, and Boaz, in verse 11, Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. Verse 12, may the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Oh my goodness, that's so amazing. Verse 13, may I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord, she said. You have given me comfort and have spoken kindly to your servants, though I do not have the standing of one of your servant girls. Verse 14, at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all that she wanted and had some left over. Verse 15, as she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men. Even if she gathers among the sheaves, don't embarrass her. Rather, pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and do not rebuke her. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah? An ephah? Ephah, yes. And I think I have
how much that is.
Yeah, so that's a bushel, about 22 liters. Then she threshed the barley. She carried it back to town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had, and left over what she had eaten enough of. Her mother-in-law asked her, where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. So right then, automatically,
now she's like, whoa.
What has happened to Naomi?
Yes, she noticed the difference and the abundance.
Yes,
the
she noticed it. And that all of a sudden made a light bulb go off in Naomi. And she's like, oh.
Everything's changed.
Everything is changing.
Yeah, everything.
Because Romans 8:28, what does it say? He always turns everything around for those that love him.
But you know what I love? Boaz covered her shame.
Yes.
That was so beautiful.
And he told the other men,
yeah.
He's like, don't shame her for having to glean this and not having anything. Yeah. She's working hard for what she has.
Yeah.
And we're going to bless her. That's what it is. Like, he's going behind and he's like, he tells her, I've heard of all that you've done.
Yeah, he's
by the time that she has gotten into this new town, word has already spread.
Yeah, it's because everyone talks, right? Everybody talks, and so he knew her story. He knew her backstory, but he blessed her anyway because honor is huge in the Jewish culture.
Yes,
and so he's like, you did this for one of our people. I'm gonna take care of you, and I'm gonna bless you exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ever hope or think, just like Christ does for us. And so he gave her all the food and he filled her up, and then she came home with so much for her, like way more than what they needed. So it's just an amazing story.
It's just amazing. And at that moment, Ruth changed the atmosphere in that whole entire home for Naomi.
Yes.
And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to change the atmosphere. And it's just amazing what we can learn through these stories. Sometimes we think that we can't even put ourselves in the shoes of people, things that happened way long ago. It's the same stuff that's still happening today.
It's the same temptation.
That's why God's word is the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's never going to change. It's the same. It's to apply this to our lives and see, that maybe if you're walking through a hard time right now and maybe you need that relationship that's going to help you to get out of that depression, out of that anxiety, out of that fear, and help you to trust. Help you to trust God for the next step.
And God, the Bible says God is no respecter of persons. That means that what he does for one, he can do for another. And that's what I love, because we can look back at these stories and be like, well, God did that for her. Then he gives you hope.
For me.
He can do it for me. And
when it gives you faith and trust, it just helps you.
Yes.
These things help us to understand that people then went through hardships too. These ladies had lost everything.
Yeah.
were going back to, I mean, Naomi had been gone for a long time, so things had changed.
Right.
It's not the same.
Right. It wasn't the same. It was a different town.
And also she had changed.
Right. She had changed a lot.
Drastically. So it would be like us moving away.
Mm-hmm. And 20 years later,
come back to our hometown. Mm-hmm. Everything had changed. Nothing looks the same. Mm-hmm. And we had gone through some really, really tough times, and we don't look the same anymore.
Right.
And then here, we decide to get a job. Someone finds favor. Mm-hmm. And then everything changes all overnight.
Because, the Bible's full, and especially in the New Testament, and suddenly.
Mm-hmm. And suddenly.
Now, it is an and suddenly, but she worked hard.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
You have to work hard.
She gave it everything she had, and she worked hard, and she did everything with excellence, and so God rewarded her.
And what's so beautiful about it, too, is that she worked hard and diligently and didn't have to say anything. You know what I'm saying? She didn't have to say, like, oh, well, I've been working in the field all day long, and I deserve this extra barley. I deserve this.
Humble.
I deserve that.
She was
very humble and sought after because of that.
Yeah. Her heart was pure.
Her heart was pure, yes. So we go to find out that then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one whose place she had been working. The name of the man I work with today is Boaz, she said.
And it's like,
in verse 20,
ding, ding, ding.
The Lord bless him, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. She added, that man is our close relative. He is one of the kinsman redeemers. Verse 21.
You know that Naomi had to be like,
yes,
oh my God,
everything's clicking.
Oh my goodness,
this
is
all
huge.
of a sudden she's like, I know why these things happen.
Like Ruth doesn't have a clue because she doesn't understand kinsman redeemer.
No.
She doesn't understand Boaz.
No,
and
because
the potential.
that's a big word. I mean,
she doesn't know what that means. She doesn't know the potential. Mm-hmm. And basically, I mean, the Bible's going to explain it, but he is the closest relative because in that culture, like if someone died, if your husband died, your brother could marry you.
Yes.
Or your cousin or the next in line could marry you and redeem you, like save you, repurchase, like take care of you, and then you're not a widow anymore, and you're covered and you're taken care of. Mm-hmm. And so he is the closest relative, and he's not married, and Naomi realizes that, and she's like, this is huge.
So tell me.
And she's probably like, her baby's jumping and she's excited.
Tell me. In Jeremiah 29:11, when it says that he has a hope and a future for us, I mean, that he's not going to harm us. He has a hope in that future for us. This was her hope in her future.
She's like, I can't even believe
this. And all it took was for Ruth to say, yes, I'm going to walk in the will and the way of what your God, Naomi says. I'm clinging to that. I'm trusting in the God that you've shown me enough to step into these deep waters that the unknown, that I have no idea. And look what she is rewarded with. Yeah. Favor.
Resources.
Yes.
Abundance.
And undeniable just glory to God for being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And that's why it's so important for us to step out.
Yeah.
To take that step. And trust, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. He's going to make that path straight, and that's what he did in this circumstance.
And it says, and acknowledge him in all of your ways.
In all, yes.
And so that's the key. That is the key. Acknowledge him in all of your ways, and that's what they were doing. That's what they finally were doing.
And then someone will find favor in you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what God is saying.
To that next step,
He's
next
saying,
level.
He's saying, just go. Mm-hmm. Just go. Trust me. Trust me. Find that relationship. Trust in that relationship, and someone eventually will find favor in you. Mm-hmm. And then look what you're going to be rewarded greatly. Yeah. And it's just.
Yeah, that's that from glory to glory. He takes
that
us from glory to glory.
Yes, and that goes back all the way to Moses. Him getting, going to Egypt and setting the captives free and all that, and he had no idea what it was going to look like. He just knew that he was supposed to take them to the promised land, and he didn't even end up going to the promised land.
Right.
I mean, Joshua and Caleb.
But he led the people. He did what he was called to do.
He did it.
So what are you called to do right now? I think
we're all
everyone's like, oh, well, he's called of God. And so everyone associates that with ministry, meaning that you become a full-time pastor or evangelist. But there's calls in all of our lives, and in every season, there's a different call, a different level. And so what is God calling you to do today?
Yes, what is he calling you to step out and trust him in today? Maybe, or that relationship that you've been kind of skeptical about, that you're, maybe you've been hurt sometime and you're kind of isolated yourself because you're scared. Like you're scared of putting your hope and your trust in, even in our own relationship. I understand. I've been there. I understand 110% how hard it is.
What I'm thinking about is we did a women's Bible study this past summer, and it was called Seamless, and it was just for women. And the common theme, the thread in all of it was they were taking a chance because women hurt them. And they hadn't done anything with women or women's group or women's ministry because they'd been hurt before.
Right.
And they all were taking a chance to be vulnerable, to come in, to grow together, to build relationships, because they knew that God was calling them to do it.
Right.
And so that's a common story for a lot of women, because women bash other women and they hurt them. And so, but we need each other.
Yes.
Like she sharpens me, and I hope I sharpen her. But like we need each other.
Yes, we all need each other, because we are all broken pieces to that puzzle that God wants to put together. But I'm just a puzzle piece. She's just a puzzle piece. But when we come together, that's when God's power is made known. It's not because of anything that we do. It's not by our might. It's not by our power. It's by the Spirit of God. And us listening to the Spirit of God and walking in the will and his way and trusting in him that he's got us. But we have to quit pushing each other away.
Right.
We have to lock arms together and
do this thing
together, like Ruth and Naomi.
Right.
I mean, they had every excuse to stay where they were at, to stay planted.
Yes, many reasons why they shouldn't.
But then Ruth would never have met Boaz. Naomi would have never got out of her depression. Who knows what would have happened to her?
Who knows? Yeah, exactly.
If
she would have stayed in that cultish environment, like where she was in Moab.
Who knows that she wouldn't have turned away from God and started to.
That's exactly
to worship this Shemosh, or I'm gonna get it wrong, the deity that they worship, and start sacrificing. She could have sacrificed Ruth. You don't know,
or just been a part of it in the ritual.
Yeah.
So I hope that you got something out of this today. I hope that God has inspired you, and I hope that you will go back and read Ruth 1 and 2. Next week we'll read 3 and 4.
Yes.
And we'll do it just like this. Take it slow and just read and glean from it. And I hope it inspires you. So we want to hear from you. We want to know that you received something from this that maybe you hadn't seen before, or maybe just a reminder of how good God is and how God can use anything. Need that. Yeah. And what stood out to you as what we talked about? What was the one thing that stood out? Let me know.
Yes.
We want to hear from you.
Let us know. And don't forget to spread the love.
Yes. Hit that arrow. And thank you guys for joining us. And again, next week we will be doing Ruth 3 and 4. So maybe you can read it. Read the whole thing. It's only 4 chapters.
Yes.
Read the whole thing, and then let's talk about it together next week.
Yeah, because I want to hear what God's telling you.
Yeah, because he'll show.
I want to know, because it may be a totally different perspective. Yeah. I love different perspectives.
Yes.
I love, just getting in a room with a bunch of people and just saying, okay, what
is God
saying to you? What does this mean to you?
Because today this is what he was saying to us.
Yes.
Next year, if we do it again, he'll say something different. He'll add to it. And so we always can see, and then depending on what you're going through, he's going to show you something different.
Yes.
So we definitely want to hear from you.
Yes. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.